Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for being here. So the other day I was sitting out in the living room in the recliner thinking to myself, what should I make a video about for Tuesday? And what popped up on my phone screen but this? Yep, that's right. It was an alert about possible storms and even possible power outages. So I thought, what better thing to make a video on with all the stuff going on right now than a solar generator? So I'll show you what I got. Check it out. Okay, so we'll go check out the equipment and some of the connections that are on it, and then we'll come back here, talk about what you can and can't do with it, and maybe what you might want to look for if you want to buy one for yourself. This is just the back of a solar panel here. So in the summertime, when these trees are covered with leaves, not very much sun will get to this roof. It'll all be shaded. So that's why we have this here. It's a 100-watt polycrystalline solar panel. And it's not perfect positioning because it's in a stairway facing out a window, but it's better than nothing for now. Okay, so this is a solar generator. Now, this right here is a handle, and it has wheels on the opposite end, and that's because it's really heavy. It's got a sealed lead acid battery in it that I believe is 1 kilowatt hour. You have a DC jack, so 12 volt. You have these 3 AC, and I believe they can go up to 1800 watts, and then you have a couple USB ports. So you can see here, there's an on-off button. It's saying that it's full, so it's fully charged. You can also see, hit this battery and it shows you, for whatever reason it's not going all the way up, but you can see here it says full. So you'll hear it kind of make noise. The fan will come on, and it'll be intermittent, but it'll kind of come on, it'll go back off, and it'll say charging right here when it's charging. But right now it's not charging. There's not a lot of heat going on, so it just says FUL. So anyway, you can also see here that it says it's a pure sine wave inverter. Sorry, it's a full sine wave inverter, which means that it would be safe for you to plug in sensitive electronics like a laptop or your phone or whatever, but of course your phone, you'd probably want to plug it to the USB port. But the AC ports are pure sine wave, so they're perfectly okay for a TV, laptop, whatever. These are two extended batteries. They are each 100 kilowatt hours, and you have another 12 volt DC port on each of those. And for the main unit, I believe you can have one solar panel, and then each of these can have a solar panel. They each have their own charge controller built right in. And then I'll take you around to the back side and show you the back. Okay, so you can see here, this is where the extra batteries plug in. It's nice because you got these big thick cables, one connector that you have to mess with, that's it. So that's pretty nice. You got fuses, you have where it plugs into the power, so you can charge the batteries through the wall outlet. More outlets to plug in other things into it. And then down here, this is where you can plug in your solar panel, and they have a 400 watt wind turbine that you can get as well at Home Depot. Okay, so that equipment that you just saw is by a brand called Nature Power, and it can be had either like directly online or I think Home Depot, and it can run up to 1800 watts at one time. Now, the more wattage you run at one time, so the more things you have plugged in, the faster it's going to drain those batteries. Now, those batteries have about 3,000 watt hours or 3 kilowatt hours of electricity. Okay, now, for instance, if you were going to run a space heater, something that is really high in wattage, a lot of space heaters are about 1,500 watts. That means for 3,000 watt hours, you could run a space heater that's 1,500 watts for about 2 hours. To give you another idea of what can be run, one time I ran the refrigerator and I wasn't careful at all. I still made ice, still opened the refrigerator whenever I wanted, and kept it plugged in the whole time, never turned the refrigerator off, and it ran for, I believe, 32 hours and change. Now, if you had a bulb, let's say a LED bulb that was 15 watts, you could probably run that for about 8 days. Of course, if during that 8 days you decided to turn on, let's say, a microwave that takes 1,000 watts, well, that's going to decrease the amount of time that that bulb will be able to be lit. Instead of 8 days, it might reduce it down to, well, just depending on how long you run the microwave, it might reduce it down to 7 days, might reduce it down to 7.5 days, whatever. But that just gives you an idea of some of the things that you can plug in and how long you can run off of a system like that. Okay, so far we've looked at 2 parts of a 3-part equation. Really, you could break it down more if you wanted, but basically you have 3 things. You have how much energy you can put in, and that's the part we haven't looked at yet. You have how much energy you can store, and that's, like I said, in this particular system, 3,000 watt hours. And then how much you can put out at once, which is 1,800 watts. That is the power of your inverter. So the panel that you saw is not in the best position. The best position would be somewhere where you get a lot of sunlight, preferably facing south at the right angle. So you want to, if you don't have the ability to have something that can track the sun, you want to preferably put it towards the south at the angle of your latitude. So if you live at latitude of 40, you want to put it at about a 40-degree angle. Now, this particular system can also take a wind generator. So you can take that wind turbine, put it out on a pole, and when you have anything over, I believe it was like 12 or 13 miles per hour, it'll start producing power. So you can start to see where there's a lot of variables here. You could have solar panels on a still day that are producing power in the sun, but there's no wind. Now, you could also have a condition where it's nighttime, and so the solar panels aren't producing anything, but that wind generator could be generating electricity for you. So it's kind of a nice system to be able to have both. So there's a huge array of different size systems that you can get. Some of them do only DC, maybe just charge your cell phone. Others might be huge and can power all kinds of stuff. You can make your own system, or you can buy an all-in-one system, such as the Kodiak. Depending on how much money you want to spend, I think a good starting point could be the Lion Energy Cub Go. It's got a big enough battery that you can run something like a CPAP machine overnight, and you can get a solar panel to charge that battery during the day. What should you look for? Well, let's talk about those variables and what they mean to you. So you want to look for a battery bank that is big enough for the amount of things that you want to run for the period of time that you want to be able to run them. So you want to get something like the kilowatt meter and take a measurement of how many watts the devices that you want to be able to power take. Then what you want to do is take each device and figure out how long you want to run it for. And if it's a 10-watt bulb and you want to run it for an hour, then you need to have 10 times 4, which is 40. You want to have 40 watt hours. Once you have how many watt hours for each device, you want to then add each of those up. And let's say you have 200 watt hours that you want to use. Well, then you need a battery that's at least 200 watt hours. You might want to oversize it a little bit because batteries do degrade over time. Speaking of batteries degrading, let's talk about batteries. Now, batteries will degrade over time, but some of the newer styles, such as lithium, polymer, and things like that, will take a lot more charge cycles before they start degrading as compared to some older types such as lead acid. Another thing to consider would be depth of discharge. And what that is how much energy can you deplete out of that battery safely without having it degrade the battery even faster than what it's rated for. So let's say you have an older style battery such as lead acid that's rated for 800 watt hours and it is rated at a 50% depth of discharge. Well, that means you really have an effective amount of 400 watt hours that you really want to be able to use that battery so it doesn't degrade even faster. The next thing to consider would be the temperature that you're going to be storing the battery at, because if you're keeping it in the trunk of a car or in a shed, it's going to be different than if you're storing it in a basement or in your closet where the temperature is always kept near room temperature. So once you figure out how much battery capacity you want, then I would start looking at how many solar panels you want. Personally, the minimum that I would be comfortable with relying on would be half of the watt hours in my battery that I need to be able to use. So if I figured that I needed at least 400 watt hours during the day, then I would hope to have at least 200 watts in solar panels. Finally, you want to make sure that the inverter on the system that you buy has the capability of putting out what you needed to put out at one time. So if you plan on putting on a space heater and a 1,000 watt microwave and a coffee pot, that's going to be different than if all you want to run is charge up your cell phone and a radio and a 10 watt LED bulb. Now there's a couple of types of inverters that you'll hear about. One is a modified sine wave inverter and the other one is a pure sine wave inverter. Now I would recommend, even though it's going to cost a little more, you're going to get a pure sine wave inverter because that's something you can plug sensitive electronics into. You can plug your laptop into it and charge it up without having to worry. If you want to learn more, I would recommend checking out the YouTube channel DIY Solar Power with Will Prowse. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions for me and if you want me to do something more in depth. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Welcome back. So I thought, this might be a good time to discuss solar. I almost had it. Afterwards, and talk about what can be plugged in, what you can. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for being here. So the other day I was sitting out in the living room. Wait a minute. Show you some of the. Okay, so we'll go check out the equipment itself and see what connections it has on it, and then we'll come. Okay, so we'll go back. Okay, so we'll come back. What am I saying? So we'll go check out the equipment, and we'll show those batteries contain about 3,000 kilowatt hours of electricity, which means it can. Wait. 3,000 wow, that would be a lot. I said that wrong. Well, this particular system can have up to 300 solar panels. 300. Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah. That would be expensive too. So there's a huge array of different style things. So you want to take how long you want to be able to take. Another thing to consider would be depths. If you're plugging in 1,000 watt.